What would you do if a wounded being told you secrets about Jesus that no religion in the world has ever taught? Secrets that could forever change everything you believe about miracles, healing, and our true origin in the universe. The revelation I'm going to share today will give you chills in the most inexplicable way possible. Before we dive deeper, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. Grab yourself a warm drink, maybe a cup of tea, or just some water, and sit back as we begin this journey together. Now, prepare yourself for a discovery that challenges everything we think we know about our spiritual history. Socorro County, New Mexico, August 17th, 1996. 3:42 inches the morning. Elena Rossi was driving home after an exhausting 12-hour shift as a paramedic when she first saw the lights in the corner of her eye. Initially, she thought she was just too tired. 24 years, working medical emergencies in New Mexico, had taught her that exhaustion could make the mind play strange tricks. "I just need a good night's sleep," she murmured to herself, blinking several times to clear her vision. But the lights were still there. Elena pulled over to the shoulder of the deserted rural road and looked through the windshield of her old Ford pickup. In the night sky, luminous formations were moving in ways that were definitely not products of her tired imagination. They pulsed with a strange, almost organic quality, as if they were alive. "What the hell is that?" she whispered, fully awake now. The lights moved in patterns that defied any aeronautical logic she knew. They weren't helicopters, too silent and too agile. They weren't commercial aircraft. They moved too erratically, and they definitely weren't stars or planets. They were clearly moving with purpose and intelligence. Elena watched, fascinated as the luminous formations danced across the starry desert sky. There was something hypnotic about their movements, almost as if they were trying to communicate through celestial choreography. Then, one of the larger lights began to falter. Initially, it was just a subtle change in movement pattern, but it quickly became obvious that something was wrong. The light pulsed irregularly, its brightness dimming and intensifying as if it were struggling against some kind of system failure. Elena felt her medical training awaken. Whatever that thing was, there was something clearly in distress. The faltering light began to descend. It wasn't an uncontrolled fall, but a descent that seemed to be desperately struggling to maintain some kind of control. Elena could see that whoever or whatever was piloting that thing was trying to avoid a catastrophic crash. "My God, it's going to crash," she whispered, watching the light disappear behind a rocky elevation approximately 2 miles ahead of her position. Her medical training kicked in immediately. If there was some kind of aircraft in an emergency situation, there could be survivors needing urgent medical assistance. Elena grabbed her portable radio to report the incident, but found only static. She checked again. Definitely no signal. She was alone on the rural road without communication, but fully aware that if there really were crash survivors, the next few minutes could be critical to their lives. In 1996, cell phones were still rare and expensive, and Elena didn't own one. "Shit," she muttered, looking in the direction where the light had disappeared. Elena made a decision that would change her existence forever. Instead of driving to the nearest town to seek help, she decided to personally check if there were injured people who needed immediate medical care. She always carried a comprehensive first aid kit in her pickup. Maybe she could make the difference between life and death for whoever was in that aircraft. She left the main road and drove across rough terrain toward the point where she had seen the light disappear. It took almost 20 minutes of careful navigation through dirt trails until she finally found something that left her completely bewildered. There were no twisted metal wreckage, spilled fuel, or violent impact marks that normally accompanied air crashes. Instead, Elena discovered a circular area where the vegetation had been bent outward in a perfectly uniform pattern that she had never seen in her 24 years responding to accidents. "What kind of accident does this?" she murmured, walking cautiously around the perimeter of the affected area. And then, in the center of this circular area, her flashlights illuminated a figure lying motionless. Elena felt her heart race. The figure was approximately 6 feet tall, but there was something different about it. The structure was surprisingly delicate, almost fragile. Even in the dim light of her flashlight, the skin seemed to have an unusual quality she couldn't explain, and the facial features, while vaguely human, had proportions that weren't exactly normal. "This can't be happening," Elena whispered to herself. But her medical training overcame any confusion. Injured was injured regardless of whatever it was. She approached cautiously, observing vital signs, breathing patterns, evidence of trauma. The being, for now it was obvious this wasn't a normal human, was unconscious but clearly alive with injuries that seemed serious but not necessarily fatal. It was when she gently touched the creature's pulse to check vital signs that something extraordinary happened. The being opened eyes that were large, expressive, and filled with an intelligence that immediately communicated both vulnerability and a wisdom that seemed ancient beyond any human measure. And then, without any movement of the lips, Elena heard a clear, soft voice directly in her mind. "Please do not fear me. I am injured and need your help. There are important things I must tell you. Things about your species that will change everything you think you know about your world." The shock of receiving telepathic communication almost made Elena step back. But there was something in the mental voice, a quality of genuine gentleness and urgency that overcame her initial fear. You're speaking in my mind?" she asked aloud, her voice trembling slightly. "This is our natural form of communication," the voice responded with compassionate patience. "I understand it may be disturbing to your species. My name is Elara, and I come from very far away. My ship had problems, and I need care to recover. But more importantly, there are truths about figures that your species venerates as sacred that you need to know. Truths that have been lost for millennia." Elena felt a chill run down her spine. There was something about the way the being mentioned sacred figures that immediately brought images of Jesus to her mind, though she couldn't explain why. "What kind of truths?" she asked, her curiosity gradually overcoming her fear. The answer that came would transform her understanding of spirituality, religion, and the true history of humanity. About the one you called Jesus of Nazareth, about who he really was, where he came from, and why his message about love was much more literal and powerful than your species ever understood. Elena Rossi was not the type of person who easily believed in unexplained phenomena. Daughter of a traditional Catholic family from Albuquerque, she had grown up with solid but practical faith, always preferring explanations based on science and experience rather than accepting mysteries without questioning. At 45 years old, Elena had built a reputation as one of the most competent and reliable paramedics in Socorro County, known for her ability to remain calm in high-pressure situations and for her genuine compassion with patients in moments of extreme vulnerability. Her journey to become a paramedic had begun at 21 when she witnessed a serious traffic accident on the road connecting Albuquerque to Santa Fe. Elena was the first person to arrive at the scene, and using only basic first aid knowledge she had learned as a Red Cross volunteer, managed to stabilize two seriously injured people until professional help arrived. The doctor who took over care later told her that her actions had saved at least one life, maybe two. "You have a natural talent for this," Dr. Bennett had commented that day. "Have you ever considered a career in emergency medicine?" That conversation changed the course of Elena's life. She enrolled in the paramedic program at the University of New Mexico and discovered that she possessed not only technical aptitude for emergency medicine, but also an almost supernatural intuition for quickly assessing medical conditions and making critical decisions under pressure. During her 24 years of career, Elena had developed a peculiar reputation among colleagues and patients. Many noticed that she frequently seemed to know things about medical conditions that weren't immediately obvious, or that she made treatment decisions that later proved to be exactly correct, even when they went against conventional protocols. "Elena has a sixth sense," Dr. Helen Foster, medical director of the regional hospital, used to comment. "She can look at a patient and perceive problems that our most sophisticated equipment sometimes misses. It's as if she could sense what's wrong before even examining properly." This enhanced medical intuition had saved dozens of lives over the years, but Elena always attributed her successes to experience and careful observation rather than any special ability. She was a fundamentally skeptical person who needed solid evidence before accepting anything that challenged her scientific understanding of the world. Elena's personal life had been marked by a series of relationships that ended due to what she called priority incompatibility. Her total dedication to medical work and her tendency to prioritize patient needs over social commitments had made it difficult to maintain lasting relationships. At 45, she lived alone in a small house in the mountains outside Sapporo, a property she had inherited from her grandmother, and that offered the privacy and tranquility she valued after intense days dealing with medical emergencies. Elena is married to her work, her colleagues frequently joked. But the truth was more complex. Elena had discovered that her ability to help people in moments of crisis provided her with a deep satisfaction that conventional romantic relationships simply couldn't match. She found purpose and identity in her role as a healer, and this dedication had shaped all aspects of her personality. Spiritually, Elena maintained a complicated relationship with the Catholic faith of her childhood. She believed in God and attended Mass occasionally, especially during family holidays, but had developed a more universalist perspective on religion over the years. Her medical work had exposed her to people from all spiritual traditions, and she had observed that love, compassion, and healing seemed to transcend specific denominations. "I believe that God works through people who help other people," Elena used to explain when questioned about her beliefs. "I don't care if you're Catholic, Protestant, Jewish, Muslim, or anything else. If you're healing suffering, you're doing sacred work." This practical philosophy had made Elena popular among patients from diverse backgrounds who frequently commented that they felt genuinely cared for and respected regardless of their own beliefs or personal circumstances. There were, however, aspects of Elena's life that she kept carefully private. Since childhood, she occasionally experienced moments of expanded perception that she couldn't adequately explain. During particularly intense medical emergencies, Elena sometimes felt as if she could perceive not only patients' physical symptoms, but also their emotional states and even their deeper spiritual needs. "It's just intuition developed through experience," she always told herself when these moments occurred. "I'm simply reading subtle signs that most people don't notice." But internally, Elena knew that her experiences sometimes transcended purely scientific explanations. There were moments during medical procedures when she felt as if she were being guided by a wisdom that came from a source beyond her formal training. Treatment decisions would appear in her mind with a clarity that seemed to come from knowledge she didn't remember learning. These experiences left her simultaneously grateful and uncomfortable. Grateful because they frequently resulted in better outcomes, but uncomfortable because they challenged her scientific understanding of how medical knowledge works. During the months prior to the incident that would change her life, Elena had noticed that these moments of expanded intuition more frequent. She began to wonder if she was developing some kind of burnout that was affecting her perception, or if perhaps she was simply becoming more sensitive to subtle aspects of medical care that she had previously ignored. "Maybe I need a vacation," Elena had thought in the week before the encounter that would completely redefine her understanding of reality, healing, and spirituality. It was this unique combination of scientific skepticism and intuitive sensitivity, of professional dedication and spiritual openness, of technical competence and genuine compassion that had prepared Elena Rossi for the most extraordinary experience of her life. Without knowing it, she had spent decades developing exactly the character qualities and consciousness that would make her capable of adequately responding to the encounter that would challenge everything she thought she knew about medicine, spirituality, and the true purpose of historical figures like Jesus of Nazareth. The decision to take Elara to her isolated mountain home was one of the most difficult Elena had ever made in her medical career. All her years of training dictated that seriously injured people should be transported immediately to appropriate medical facilities, but the circumstances were completely unprecedented. How could she explain to an emergency team that she had found a clearly non-human being in the middle of the desert? "My house is about 20 minutes from here," Elena said aloud, still adjusting to the strangeness of speaking with someone who responded directly in her mind. "It's completely isolated. Can you move, or do I need to carry you?" "I can walk with assistance," Elara responded telepathically, her mental voice filled with deep gratitude. "My species is physically more fragile than yours, but also heals more quickly when provided with adequate rest conditions." Elena helped Elara to stand, surprised by how light the being was despite its height. It was like helping a large child instead of an adult. And there was an almost ethereal quality about Elara's physical form that made Elena constantly question whether what she was experiencing was real. The journey to the house was tense and surreal. Elara remained silent for most of the trip, apparently concentrating energy on simply staying conscious. Elena drove through the familiar rural roads, but everything seemed different now, as if she was seeing her world through completely new eyes. "This is really happening," Elena murmured to herself as she maneuvered her pickup through the dirt roads leading to her property. "I have a being from another world in my car." When they finally arrived at Elena's house, a modest adobe construction that her grandmother had built in the 50s, Elara lifted her head for the first time during the trip and observed the surroundings with genuine interest. "You live alone in this isolated location," Elara commented telepathically. It wasn't a question, but an observation that carried nuances of understanding about Elena's character. "I like the privacy," Elena replied, helping Elara out of the vehicle. "And after what just happened, I think I'll appreciate it even more." Elena settled Elara in the guest room, improvising medical care with the supplies she had available. It was challenging because she wasn't sure which human medical procedures would be appropriate for Elara's physiology. But the being guided her telepathically through the basic care needed. "My species responds well to the same basic healing principles as yours," Elara explained, as Elena carefully cleaned the wounds. "Cleanliness, rest, proper nutrition, and most importantly, positive emotional environment." During the first hours after bringing her home, Elena oscillated between scientific fascination and surges of panic about the implications of what she was doing. She was hiding an extraterrestrial being in her house, providing unauthorized medical care, and potentially violating dozens of federal laws she didn't even know existed. "You need to understand," Elena said while checking Elara's temperature with a thermometer that registered completely anomalous readings, "that this goes against everything I was trained for. I should be reporting this to authorities. And, if you did that," Elara responded gently, "I would be transported to facilities where I would be studied as a specimen rather than treated as a conscious being. My mission would be compromised, and important information I must share with your species would be lost forever." It was at this moment that Elena asked the question that had been burning in her mind since the first moment of telepathic communication. "What information? What did you mean about Jesus?" Elara closed her large, expressive eyes for a moment, as if accessing deep memories or preparing to reveal something of extreme importance. "Elena Rossi," she said finally, "your species understands very little about the true nature of the one you call Jesus of Nazareth. You see him as an isolated divine figure, but the reality is much more extraordinary and hopeful." Elena felt her heart race. As someone raised in the Catholic tradition, questions about Jesus touched the core of her fundamental beliefs. "What do you mean by that?" "Jesus was not merely human," Elara transmitted, her telepathic communication filled with a quality of deep reverence. "He was what my civilization calls a star seed, a highly evolved soul who voluntarily chose to incarnate on your planet as part of a coordinated mission to accelerate your species' spiritual evolution." Elena felt as if the ground had moved beneath her feet. "You're saying that Jesus was alien?" "Not exactly," Elara corrected patiently. "He was a consciousness that had transcended the limitations of specific planetary origin. Souls like Jesus exist in higher dimensions and can choose to incarnate on any world where their presence might facilitate spiritual growth." During the following hours, as Elara rested and recovered, she began to share information that challenged everything Elena thought she knew about Christianity, spirituality, and humanity's history. "My civilization has detailed records of Jesus' mission on your planet," Elara explained. "We serve as distant mentors to advanced souls who undertake missions like his. Jesus maintained regular communication with our consciousness networks throughout his earthly life." Elena struggled to process this information. "You're saying that Jesus spoke with aliens?" "Jesus spoke with evolved consciousnesses that exist beyond planetary limitations," Elara clarified. "What you interpret as his prayers and meditations were frequently sessions of direct communication with us, receiving guidance on how to best serve humanity's spiritual evolution." The most impactful revelation came when Elara began to explain the true nature of Jesus' miracles. "What you call miracles were not supernatural suspensions of natural laws," Elara transmitted. "They were applications of advanced spiritual technologies that Jesus mastered through his expanded consciousness. Healing, multiplication of food, even resurrection. All of these were capacities that any being with adequate consciousness development can learn." Elena felt her conceptual world fundamentally reorganizing. "You're saying that any person could do what Jesus did?" "Not any person immediately," Elara responded, "but any person eventually through adequate spiritual development." This was Jesus's true message. Not that he was unique and inaccessible, but that he was an example of the potential that exists within all human consciousness. As the night progressed and Elara continued to recover under Elena's care, it became clear that this first contact was just the beginning of revelations that would completely transform Elena's understanding of religion, spirituality, and the true purpose of human existence on Earth. During the following 3 days, as Elara recovered under Elena's dedicated care, the extraterrestrial being revealed information that completely rewrote the paramedic's understanding of Jesus, Christianity, and the true purpose of human existence on Earth. Each revelation was more extraordinary than the last, gradually building a picture of reality that was simultaneously more vast and more hopeful than Elena had ever imagined. Elara communicated during her second morning in the house. "It's important that you understand that Jesus's mission on your planet was not an isolated event. He was part of a much larger program that my civilization and other evolved consciousnesses have been coordinating for millennia to assist young species in their spiritual evolution." Elena, who had spent the previous night awake processing the initial revelations about Jesus, sat beside the bed where Elara was resting. "What kind of program?" "We call it the Starseed Project," Elara explained. Her telepathic communication filled with depths of meaning that Elena was just beginning to understand. On planets throughout the entire galaxy, highly evolved consciousnesses voluntarily incarnate during critical periods of civilizational development to introduce concepts and capacities that accelerate collective spiritual growth. Elena learned that Jesus had been just one of many starseeds sent to Earth throughout human history. Other figures that humanity venerated as prophets, saints, or extraordinary spiritual leaders were frequently advanced souls, participating in the same evolutionary assistance program. Buddha, Krishna, some of the prophets you know through various religious traditions, Elara listed. All were conscious participants in coordinated missions to elevate your species' spiritual potential. Each introduced specific aspects of spiritual knowledge that were appropriate for the cultures and time periods where they incarnated. But Elara explained that Jesus's mission had been particularly significant and comprehensive compared to previous interventions. Jesus was sent during a critical period when your species was developing communication systems and social organization that would allow global dissemination of spiritual teachings. Elara revealed his mission was to introduce not only philosophical concepts about love and compassion, but practical demonstrations of spiritual capacities that all human consciousness has the potential to develop. The most extraordinary revelation came when Elara began to explain the true nature of the miracles that Jesus had performed. "What you call miracles," Elara transmitted, were actually demonstrations of spiritual technologies based on advanced understanding of the relationship between consciousness, energy, and physical matter. Jesus mastered principles that allowed direct manipulation of energetic systems through focused, conscious intention. Elena struggled to understand these implications. "You're saying that Jesus used some kind of alien technology?" "Not technology in the sense of mechanical devices," Elara clarified patiently. "Consciousness technology, specific methods of focusing intention and energy that produce measurable effects in the physical world. Jesus had developed mastery over what we call the consciousness-matter interface." Elara explained that through this interface, Jesus could diagnose and heal diseases by directly perceiving the energetic patterns that created health or illness. He could multiply food by reorganizing molecular structures through focused intention. He could even reverse recent death by reactivating biological systems through directed application of consciousness energy. "But the most important capacity that Jesus demonstrated," Elara continued, "was what we call healing through love frequency. This is the most powerful spiritual technology that exists in the universe, and it was the true center of his entire mission." Elena felt a chill of recognition. "What do you mean?" "When Jesus taught about love," Elara explained, "he wasn't offering merely moral advice. He was providing precise technical instructions on how to activate the most fundamental healing force that exists. Genuine love generates specific, energetic frequencies that automatically align biological systems with patterns of perfect health. Elara revealed that every evolved consciousness in the cosmos had independently discovered this same fundamental truth. Love was not merely a feeling or philosophical concept, but a literal energetic force capable of reorganizing matter at molecular levels. This is why Jesus emphasized love one another so much. Elara transmitted. He was teaching humanity how to access universal medicine that can heal any condition, resolve any conflict, and elevate any consciousness to higher states of well-being and clarity. During the following days, Elara personally demonstrated these principles. Elena watched with growing amazement as Elara's wounds healed at impossible speed whenever she treated the being with genuine compassion and loving care. When Elena was tense or worried, Elara's recovery slowed down. When Elena centered herself in unconditional love and healing intention, the healing accelerated dramatically. "You're seeing direct operation of the technology that Jesus mastered," Elara explained during a particularly impressive demonstration where a significant wound healed visibly in a matter of hours. "Your loving presence is activating my own natural healing systems." This is exactly how Jesus conducted his healings. Elena also learned that Jesus' mission had included establishing foundations for the eventual revelation of broader truths about humanity's cosmic origin and its destiny as a galactic species. Jesus knew that his era wasn't ready to fully understand the cosmic nature of his mission, Elara revealed. So, he focused on establishing fundamental principles: love, compassion, forgiveness, service that would prepare human consciousness for greater revelations that would come in future eras. Elara explained that the current era represented the beginning of the period when humanity was finally ready to understand more complete truths about Jesus and his mission. "This is why beings like me occasionally make direct contact with prepared individuals like you," Elara transmitted. "The time has come to restore complete understanding of Jesus' teachings and demonstrate that the capacities he exhibited are natural potentials that any human being can develop." The final revelation about Elara's mission was that she and others from her civilization continued monitoring and assisting Earth, identifying individuals like Elena, who demonstrated potential to serve as bridges between advanced spiritual knowledge and conventional human understanding. "Your natural compassion and openness to healing," Elara explained, "indicate that you possess latent capacities to channel some of the same energies that Jesus utilized. Part of my mission is to activate these potentials in suitable individuals and teach how to use these capacities to benefit others." Elena understood that her life was about to change in ways she could barely imagine. She was no longer just a paramedic responding to medical emergencies, but a student of spiritual technologies that could revolutionize medicine, psychology, and human understanding of consciousness potential. Despite the extraordinary evidence she had witnessed during the first days caring for Elara, Elena Rossi faced growing waves of doubt and internal resistance that threatened to completely shake her ability to accept the revelation she was receiving. The implications of what Elara had shared about Jesus were so vast and revolutionary that Elena's rational mind desperately struggled to find alternative explanations that could preserve her previous worldview. The first wave of resistance emerged during the third night after bringing Elara home, when Elena woke at 3:00 the morning with an overwhelming sensation of panic about what she was doing. Lying in her familiar bed in the house where she had grown up visiting her grandmother, the revelations about Jesus and spiritual technology seemed not only implausible, but potentially dangerous to her mental sanity. "My God, what have I done?" Elena murmured in the dark, her heart racing with anxiety. "I brought a completely unknown creature into my house, and I'm accepting everything she tells me about Jesus without questioning. Maybe I'm having a nervous breakdown." Elena spent hours obsessively analyzing her experiences, searching for psychological or medical explanations that could explain what she was experiencing. Perhaps the stress of 24 years working in emergency medicine had finally taken its toll. Perhaps she was experiencing elaborate hallucinations caused by chronic exhaustion and social isolation. The telepathic communication could be late-onset schizophrenia, she rationalized, remembering cases she had studied during medical training. "And maybe I'm projecting non-human characteristics onto someone who was actually just a person with genetic deformities or injuries that distorted their features." This line of thinking led her to question every aspect of her experiences with Elara. The accelerated healing capabilities could be explained by initial misdiagnosis of the severity of the injuries. The unusual physical appearance could be the result of rare medical conditions she didn't immediately recognize. Even the circular area where she found Elara could have a natural explanation she had missed due to shock and confusion from the situation. The second wave of doubt was even more disturbing. Elena began to question the religious and spiritual implications of accepting Elara's revelations. As someone raised in the Catholic tradition, the idea that Jesus was not exclusively divine, but part of a larger cosmic program challenged the fundamental foundations of her faith. If I accept what Elara is telling me, Elena reflected anxiously, does that mean everything I was taught to believe about Jesus is wrong? That the Catholic Church, that the entire Christian tradition is based on incomplete or distorted understanding of the truth? The possibility that her fundamental religious beliefs could be inadequate or limited terrified her, not only intellectually, but emotionally. Elena had found comfort and purpose in her faith during difficult moments in her life, especially during medical emergencies, when she faced human suffering that seemed inexplicable or unjust. What if I'm being deceived by something that's trying to lead me away from God? She wondered during a moment of particular spiritual anguish. What if this is some kind of test of faith, and I'm failing by accepting these heresies about Jesus? The third wave of resistance involved practical fears about the consequences of her actions and the knowledge she was receiving. Elena began to imagine disastrous scenarios that could result from her decision to hide Elara and accept extraordinary revelations about cosmic reality. If someone discovers what I'm doing, she worried I'll lose my medical license, my career, my reputation in the community. People will think I've gone insane. Federal authorities could arrest me for hiding evidence of extraterrestrial contact. My entire life could be destroyed. Elena also feared the long-term implications of developing the spiritual capacities that Elara had mentioned. If she really possessed potential to channel healing energies similar to those Jesus had used, that would mean responsibilities and expectations she didn't feel prepared to face. I'm not a spiritual leader, Elena thought. I'm just a paramedic who wants to help people through conventional medicine. I don't want to be responsible for spiritual technologies or for teaching others about cosmic capacities. This is much more than I asked for in my life. The fourth wave of doubt was perhaps the most fundamental. Elena began to question her own worthiness and qualifications to receive such extraordinary revelations. Why would an advanced being from a cosmic civilization choose a 4- or 5-year-old paramedic in a small New Mexico town to share secrets about Jesus and spiritual evolution? Surely there are more qualified people, Elena reflected with anguishing humility. Brilliant theologians, respected religious leaders, famous scientists who could use this information to benefit millions of people. Why me? What's special about me that would justify this? This extraordinary contact, this line of thinking, led her to question whether her experiences could be products of inflated ego or psychological need to feel important and special. Perhaps her solitary and routine life had created an elaborate fantasy where she played a central role in significant cosmic events. During the lowest point of these doubts, approximately a week after finding Elara, Elena seriously considered seeking psychiatric help and possibly turning Elara over to medical or military authorities. The psychological pressure of carrying such extraordinary secrets, combined with her growing doubts about her sanity and judgment, had become almost unbearable. It was at this critical moment that Elara, demonstrating compassionate sensitivity to Elena's emotional state, decided to provide an unequivocal demonstration that would permanently dispel all doubts about the reality of her revelations and the veracity of her knowledge about Jesus and spiritual technology. Elara transmitted one morning when she perceived her caregiver's level of anguish. I understand that the information I've shared challenges the foundations of everything you believed. Your doubts are natural and even healthy. But the time has come for you to directly experience the truths I have described so that you no longer need to depend only on faith or credulity. What followed would be a demonstration that would forever change Elena's relationship with doubt, faith, and understanding of the true potential of human consciousness. The demonstration that would forever transform Elena's perspective on the reality of Elara's revelations began subtly but quickly escalated to proportions that challenged all her attempts to find conventional explanations. It was a Thursday morning and Elena was preparing breakfast when Elara appeared in the kitchen, moving with a grace and energy that were dramatically different from the weakness she had demonstrated during the first days of recovery. "Elena," Elara transmitted, her telepathic communication filled with gentle but resolute determination. "You have been doubting the veracity of the information I shared about Jesus and spiritual technology. This is understandable, but now I will directly demonstrate the principles that Jesus mastered so that you can personally experience the reality of these capacities." Elena stopped stirring the eggs she was preparing and turned to face Elara. "What kind of demonstration?" "First, I will show how Jesus diagnosed medical conditions," Elara explained. "Come closer and allow me to examine your body's energy in the same way that Jesus examined those who came seeking healing." Elena approached hesitantly, still struggling with skepticism, but curious to see what Elara would do. The being extended her delicate hands toward Elena, stopping approximately 6 inches from her body, and began to move her palms slowly along her torso and limbs without ever physically touching. "You have mild chronic inflammation in your right knee," Elara announced after a few moments of scanning. "Result of a fall you suffered at 17. There's also accumulated tension in your neck and shoulder muscles due to work stress, and you have a small scar on your small intestine from an appendectomy performed when you were 30. Elena felt her heart race. All these observations were completely accurate, but they weren't information that could be determined through casual visual observation. The inflammation in her knee was so subtle that she herself often forgot about it, and the appendectomy scar was completely internal. "How can you know these things?" Elena asked, her voice trembling slightly. "I'm perceiving energy patterns in your body the same way Jesus perceived them," Elara explained. "Each physical condition creates distinct energy signatures that can be read by adequately attuned consciousness. This was one of the fundamental capacities that made Jesus so effective as a healer." But the demonstration was just beginning. Elara asked Elena to bring a plant that was visibly sick, a fern on the windowsill that had been wilting despite Elena's regular care. "Now I will demonstrate how Jesus applied healing energy," Elara announced, positioning her hands over the dying plant. Elena watched with growing fascination as Elara closed her eyes and remained still for several minutes, apparently concentrating some kind of energy toward the fern. Initially, nothing happened that Elena could perceive. Then, gradually, she began to notice subtle changes in the plant. The wilted leaves began to straighten. More vibrant colors emerged, where previously there had been only yellowed and brown tones. New shoots began to appear in areas where the plant had seemed completely dead. "My God," Elena whispered, observing a transformation that would normally take weeks or months, happening in a matter of minutes. Directed consciousness energy can accelerate and optimize natural healing processes, Elara explained, opening her eyes. Jesus used identical principles when healing people, but on a much larger scale and with mastery far superior to mine. The third part of the demonstration was even more impressive. Elara asked Elena to bring some raw rice grains and a small amount of water in a bowl. "Now I will demonstrate principles that Jesus used when multiplying loaves and fishes," Elara announced, positioning her hands over the bowl. Elena watched skeptically, expecting some kind of sleight of hand trick. Instead, she witnessed something that challenged all her understanding of physics and biology. For approximately 15 minutes, Elara remained concentrated over the bowl, and Elena could see, literally see, new rice grains gradually appearing in the water. It wasn't an illusion or skillful manipulation. Elena watched individual grains materialize from nothing, gradually growing to full size before becoming indistinguishable from the original grains. When the process finished, the bowl contained approximately 3 times the original amount of rice. "How is this possible?" Elena asked, her voice almost a whisper. "Molecular reorganization through focused, conscious intention," Elara explained simply. Jesus mastered this capacity at levels that allowed him to create massive quantities of food from minimal resources. He wasn't violating natural laws, but applying principles that your science hasn't yet discovered. But the most extraordinary demonstration came when Elara decided to show Elena how to activate her own latent healing capacities. She instructed Elena to place her hands over a small cut she had accidentally made on her finger a few days before while preparing food. Now I will guide you through the process that Jesus taught for healing energy activation, Elara transmitted. Close your eyes and focus only on unconditional love directed toward your own well-being. Elena followed the instructions, initially feeling foolish, but gradually entering a state of meditative focus. Elara guided her through specific techniques of breathing, visualization, and emotional intention. Feel love flowing through your hands, Elara instructed. Not emotional love, but love as the fundamental energetic force of the universe. Allow this energy to move through you toward the area that needs healing. For approximately 10 minutes, Elena maintained this focus and gradually began to feel a warm, tingling sensation in her hands. When she finally opened her eyes and examined the cut, she discovered it had healed completely. Not just closed, but without leaving any sign that it had existed. I did that? Elena asked, examining her finger repeatedly. You activated the same principles that Jesus used, Elara confirmed with something that seemed like parental pride. This capacity exists within every human being. Jesus came to demonstrate that you don't need to depend on external saviors, but can develop direct connection with universal healing forces. The final demonstration was the most impressive of all. Elara asked Elena to bring a photograph of someone who was facing health problems. Elena brought a photo of her elderly neighbor, Mrs. Higgins, who had been struggling with severe arthritis. Now I will demonstrate how Jesus sent healing across distances, Elara announced, holding the photograph. He didn't need to be physically present to apply healing energy. Elara concentrated on the photo for approximately 20 minutes, using techniques similar to those she had demonstrated with the plant and rice. When she finished, she instructed Elena to check on Mrs. Higgins in a few hours. Later that day, when Elena visited her neighbor, Mrs. Higgins greeted her with unusual enthusiasm. Elena, the most extraordinary thing happened, the elderly woman exclaimed. My arthritis simply disappeared this morning. For the first time in years, I can move my hands and knees without pain. It's like I'm 22 years old again. When Elena returned home and reported this confirmation to Elara, all her doubts about the reality of the spiritual capacities that Jesus had mastered evaporated completely. She had witnessed unequivocal demonstrations of principles that transcended any conventional medical or scientific explanation. Now you understand, Elara transmitted with deep satisfaction, that when Jesus performed miracles, he was simply applying consciousness technologies that any human being can learn. His mission was to demonstrate the potential that exists within all your species. With all her doubts definitively dispelled by the extraordinary demonstrations, Elena was prepared to receive the deepest and most transformative revelations about Jesus, his cosmic mission, and humanity's true destiny. During an extraordinarily intense communication session 2 days after the demonstrations, Elara shared information that would completely redefine Elena's understanding of Christianity, spirituality, and Earth's role in the greater cosmos. Elena, Elara began, her telepathic transmission filled with a solemnity that immediately captured the paramedic's complete attention. Now that you have directly experienced the reality of the capacities that Jesus mastered, you are ready to understand even deeper truths about his mission and his true identity. The first profound revelation was about the cosmic origin of the soul that had incarnated as Jesus of Nazareth. The consciousness you know as Jesus, Elara transmitted, had evolved far beyond the need for physical experience on any specific planet. He was what my civilization calls an ascended master, a soul that had completed multiple cycles of evolution through different worlds and dimensions, achieving states of spiritual development that transcend material limitations. Elena learned that Jesus had voluntarily chosen to descend from higher states of existence to incarnate on Earth during a critical period of human development. This decision represented an extraordinary sacrifice, as it meant temporarily accepting limitations of physical form and linear consciousness that he had transcended eons ago. Imagine an adult voluntarily choosing to return to the consciousness of a small child to help other children learn and grow. Elara explained through analogy. This was the level of sacrifice that Jesus' soul made to assist humanity's spiritual evolution. The second profound revelation concerned the cosmic communication network that had supported Jesus throughout his entire earthly mission. Jesus was never alone in his mission, Elara revealed. He maintained constant telepathic communication with what you might call a cosmic council, an assembly of evolved consciousnesses from multiple civilizations that coordinate spiritual assistance for developing planets. Elena discovered that many of Jesus's prayers and meditation periods were actually sessions of direct communication with these cosmic mentors, receiving guidance on how to best navigate the challenges of his mission and how to adapt advanced spiritual teachings for limited human understanding. When Jesus withdrew to mountains or deserts to pray, Elara explained he was frequently participating in interdimensional conferences, consulting on strategies to elevate human consciousness without causing cultural shock that could impede spiritual progress. The third profound revelation was about the true nature of Jesus's resurrection and its implications for human understanding of life and death. What you call the resurrection, Elara transmitted, was actually a controlled demonstration of principles that govern the relationship between consciousness and physical form. Jesus didn't die in the sense that humans understand death, but temporarily withdrew his consciousness from his physical body and then reintegrated it to demonstrate the illusory nature of mortality. Elena understood that this demonstration had been carefully planned to establish conceptual foundations for truths that humanity would eventually discover about consciousness, continuity beyond physical existence. Jesus knew that his era wasn't ready to fully understand that consciousness is eternal and that physical death is simply a transition, Elara explained. So he provided a dramatic demonstration that planted conceptual seeds that would flourish into more complete understanding in future eras. The fourth profound revelation related to the true meaning of Jesus's teachings about love and its application as universal spiritual technology. When Jesus taught "Love one another as I have loved you," Elara revealed, he was providing precise technical instructions for activating the most powerful force in the universe. Love, as Jesus understood it, is not emotion or feeling, but the fundamental energetic frequency that maintains all creation in harmony. Elena learned that evolved civilizations throughout the cosmos had independently discovered this same fundamental truth. Conscious love generates energy fields that automatically promote healing, growth, and evolution in any system where it is applied. This is why Jesus's presence was so transformative, Elara explained. He constantly operated from this frequency of universal love, creating healing fields around him that benefited anyone who entered his presence. The fifth profound revelation concerned the continuing mission that had been established through Jesus's work and how it was unfolding in the current era. Jesus established what we might call a spiritual network around Earth. Elara transmitted through his teachings and the example of his life. He created an energetic template that would facilitate accelerated spiritual awakening in future eras when humanity was more prepared for complete truths. Elena discovered that this spiritual network was now being activated through individuals like herself who demonstrated capacity to integrate advanced spiritual knowledge with practical service to humanity. You are living during the period that Jesus anticipated and for which he prepared foundations, Elara revealed. The current era is when the teachings he planted as seeds will finally flourish into complete understanding of human spiritual potential. The sixth profound revelation was about the specific role that Elena and others like her would play in continuing Jesus's mission. Jesus introduced concepts, Elara explained, but couldn't demonstrate complete applications due to the cultural limitations of his era. Now, individuals like you are chosen to demonstrate practical applications of principles that Jesus taught, showing how spiritual technologies can be integrated with modern scientific knowledge. Elena understood that she had been prepared throughout her entire life through her medical career, her natural sensitivity for healing, and her spiritual openness to serve as a bridge between Jesus's ancient teachings and contemporary applications of consciousness technology. The seventh and most extraordinary revelation was about future events that would determine whether Jesus's mission would achieve complete success or whether humanity would lose this critical evolutionary opportunity. The next 2 decades are crucial, Elara transmitted with palpable urgency. During this period, a critical mass of humans must awaken to the spiritual capacities that Jesus demonstrated. If this threshold is reached, humanity will make a successful transition to galactic civilization. If not, the current opportunity will be lost, and the process must be restarted in a future cycle. Elena saw through telepathic transmissions glimpses of two possible timelines, one where humanity embraced its spiritual potential and joined the cosmic community of evolved civilizations, and another where fear and resistance resulted in stagnation and eventual need to restart the evolutionary process in the distant future. The final and deepest revelation was about the fundamental nature of reality and the place of human consciousness in the cosmos. The entire universe, Elara transmitted, is a multi-dimensional school designed to accelerate consciousness evolution through the experience of apparent separation and limitation. Jesus was a visiting teacher to this school, coming from higher levels to assist students who were ready for graduation. Elena understood that all physical existence was temporary and that the true purpose of life was the development of consciousness qualities, love, wisdom, compassion that would allow transcendence of material limitations and participation in higher dimensional realities. When Jesus said, "You are gods," Elara concluded, he was revealing literal truth about the potential that exists within all human consciousness. His mission was to awaken humanity to its own latent divinity. When these extraordinary revelations finally ended, Elena Rossi was no longer an ordinary paramedic who had found a wounded extraterrestrial being. She had become a guardian of cosmic truths that could transform human understanding of Jesus, spirituality, and humanity's true destiny as an evolved galactic species. With the profound revelations about Jesus and his cosmic mission completely integrated into her consciousness, Elena Rossi underwent an internal transformation that fundamentally redefined not only her personal identity and medical career, but her understanding of the purpose of human existence and her responsibility as a bearer of spiritual technologies that Jesus had introduced 2,000 years before. The first and most significant transformation occurred in her perception of medicine and healing. Before Elara's revelations, Elena had viewed her work as a paramedic through a purely scientific lens, diagnosing symptoms, applying medical protocols, transporting patients to appropriate facilities. Now, she understood that true healing operated at much deeper levels than conventional physical interventions. "I'm not just a paramedic," Elena reflected during one of her first emergency calls after Elara's demonstrations. "I'm a facilitator of healing processes that include, but transcend, conventional medicine. Each call is an opportunity to apply principles that Jesus mastered." This new perspective completely transformed her approach to work. Elena began to subtly integrate energy healing techniques she had learned from Elara into her conventional medical protocols. While checking vital signs or administering first aid, she simultaneously directed healing intention through her hands, creating energy fields that accelerated natural healing processes. The results were extraordinary. Patients that Elena treated consistently demonstrated faster recoveries, fewer post-treatment complications, and frequently reported inexplicable sensations of peace and well-being during and after receiving her care. "There's something special about the way paramedic Rossi works," commented Dr. Caldwell, medical director of the regional hospital. After observing a series of exceptionally positive outcomes, patients she treats arrive at the hospital in more stable emotional states and frequently with better prognosis than we would expect based on their initial injuries. The second significant transformation was in the development of perceptual capacities that transcended conventional medical diagnosis. Elena discovered she could perceive not only physical symptoms, but also energy patterns that created or maintained specific health conditions. "I can see where energy is blocked or misaligned," Elena described in her personal journal. "It's like having X-ray vision that shows not only physical structures, but energy flows that maintain health or create disease." And this expanded perception allowed her to frequently identify medical problems before they fully manifested as physical symptoms or discover underlying causes of conditions that confused other medical professionals. The third transformation was in the development of a natural and continuous connection with the spiritual network that Elara had described as Jesus's legacy. Elena discovered she could access guidance and knowledge from sources that extended far beyond her formal medical education. "It's like having a team of spiritual consultants available during each emergency," Elena reflected. "When I face complex medical situations, I can tune into a wisdom that always knows exactly which interventions will be most effective." This connection also provided her access to specific healing techniques that seemed to be transmitted directly to her consciousness as different situations arose. Elena began using methods she had never formally studied, but that consistently produced exceptional results. The fourth significant transformation was in the development of an intuitive understanding of the spiritual and emotional states of people around her. Elena began to perceive not only physical conditions but also deeper healing needs that extended into psychological and spiritual dimensions. Each person carries wounds that go far beyond their physical symptoms. Elena understood. Part of my work now is to offer healing for aspects of their lives that conventional medicine doesn't recognize or address. This expanded perception transformed her interactions with patients from functional medical transactions to deeply healing encounters that frequently touched more fundamental aspects of people's well-being and life purpose. The fifth transformation was in the development of a natural capacity to inspire spiritual awakening in other medical professionals and colleagues. Without making any deliberate effort to teach or convert people, Elena discovered that her transformed presence frequently catalyzed questioning about the limitations of conventional medicine and openness to expanded possibilities of healing. There's something about working with Elena that makes me question everything I think I know about medicine, commented Rebecca Thorne, a nurse who had begun working regularly with Elena. She never talks about spiritual or alternative concepts, but simply being beside her during emergencies opens me to healing possibilities I had never considered. The sixth transformation was in the development of a cosmic perspective that allowed her to see individual medical cases as part of much larger evolutionary patterns. Elena came to understand that each emergency, each patient, each healing situation was an opportunity for the spiritual network established by Jesus to express itself through her. I'm not just helping individuals, Elena reflected. I'm participating in a larger process, where spiritual technologies that Jesus introduced are being reintegrated into human society through practical applications in modern medicine. This expanded perspective gave her work a sense of sacred purpose that transcended conventional professional satisfaction. The seventh transformation was in the development of a deep understanding of how to integrate advanced spiritual knowledge with effective functioning in the conventional world. Elena learned to operate simultaneously as a competent medical professional within established systems and as a channel for healing capacities that transcended standard medical protocols. The key is never to contradict or challenge conventional medicine, Elena understood, but simply to add dimensions of healing that complement and amplify established treatments. This approach allowed her to integrate spiritual technologies into her practice without creating conflicts with colleagues or supervisors, demonstrating that it was possible to honor both medical science and healing principles that Jesus had taught. The eighth and most profound transformation was in the development of a direct personal connection with Jesus's consciousness that transcended religious denominations or theological dogmas. Elena discovered she could communicate telepathically with the same consciousness that had incarnated as Jesus, receiving direct guidance on how to apply his teachings in contemporary medical contexts. Jesus is not limited by history or geography, Elena understood with deep admiration. His consciousness remains active and available to anyone who genuinely desires to continue his work of healing and spiritual elevation. This direct connection provided Elena with a sense of sacred partnership that transformed each workday into a conscious collaboration with spiritual forces that operated through human history to facilitate consciousness evolution. All these transformations integrated to create in Elena Rossi a unique presence in the medical community, a professional who operated with exceptional technical competence while channeling healing capacities that directly echoed methods that Jesus had used 2,000 years before. She had truly become a bridge between modern medicine and ancient spiritual technologies, demonstrating that it was possible to honor both science and spirituality in service to human healing. With her profound internal transformations deeply consolidated, Elena Rossi developed a revolutionary understanding of reality that completely redefined her perception of medicine, spirituality, Jesus's true mission, and humanity's role in the greater cosmos. This new perspective was not merely theoretical, but a lived and practical perception that influenced every aspect of her existence and preparation to serve as a bearer of spiritual technologies in an era of planetary consciousness awakening. The first aspect of her new understanding related to the true nature of medicine and its future evolutionary potential. Elena came to understand that conventional medicine, while valuable in its current applications, represented only a fraction of what would be possible when spiritual principles that Jesus had demonstrated were completely integrated with modern scientific knowledge. Medicine is evolving toward rediscovery of truths that Jesus knew perfectly, Elena reflected during one of her morning meditations. We are approaching an era where energy diagnosis, vibrational healing, and consciousness therapy will be recognized as legitimate and essential aspects of medical care. Elena could glimpse a near future where hospitals would incorporate healing meditation rooms, where doctors would be trained in energy perception beyond physical anatomy, and where patients' emotional and spiritual states would be considered as important as their physical symptoms. The second aspect of her new understanding involved a transformed perception of the nature of miracles and their relevance to contemporary medicine. Elena understood that the instantaneous healings performed by Jesus were not unique supernatural events, but demonstrations of natural principles that any healthcare professional could learn to apply. Jesus' miracles were simply medicine operating in its most advanced form. Elena understood when he healed instantly. He was applying knowledge about the relationship between consciousness, energy, and matter that our science is only beginning to rediscover. This perspective completely transformed her approach to impossible medical cases. Instead of accepting prognostic limitations, Elena began to see each situation as an opportunity to apply more advanced healing principles that could transcend conventional medical expectations. The third aspect of her new understanding related to the true nature of spirituality and its relationship with physical health. Elena discovered that spirituality was not a category separate from medicine but the most fundamental dimension of all healing processes. The separation between medicine and spirituality is artificial and counterproductive. Elena understood. Jesus never made this distinction because he operated from understanding that true healing always involves integration of body, mind, and spirit. This understanding allowed her to develop treatment approaches that simultaneously addressed physical symptoms and deeper spiritual needs, frequently resulting in healings that transcended expectations based solely on physical interventions. The fourth aspect of her new understanding involved a completely reformulated perception of healthcare professionals' role in society. Elena came to see doctors, nurses, and paramedics not just as technicians applying scientific protocols, but as modern facilitators of the same type of healing work that Jesus had performed. Every person who chooses a healing career is unconsciously responding to the same calling that led Jesus to focus his mission on healing and elevating human suffering. Elena reflected, "We are all spiritual heirs to his work, regardless of our specific religious beliefs." This perspective transformed her interactions with medical colleagues, inspiring many to question their own motivations for entering medicine and to explore deeper dimensions of purpose in their work. The fifth aspect of her new understanding related to the nature of diseases and their function in the human evolutionary process. Elena understood that many health conditions were not simply random biological failures, but opportunities for consciousness, growth, and spiritual awakening. Disease frequently serves as a catalyst for personal transformations that wouldn't occur otherwise. Elena perceived, when we approach medical conditions only as problems to be eliminated, we miss opportunities to facilitate deeper growth that the experience of illness can offer. This understanding didn't diminish her commitment to alleviating physical suffering, but added a richer dimension to her work, where she could help patients discover meaning and growth through their illness experiences. The sixth aspect of her new understanding involved deep perception of divine timing and how to recognize when specific situations offered opportunities for application of more advanced spiritual technologies. Elena learned to distinguish between cases where conventional medicine was appropriate and situations where energetic interventions could produce more extraordinary results. There are moments when I can feel that higher presences are working through a medical situation, Elena described. In these moments, I know I can channel healing capacities that transcend my normal training and produce results that surprise even me. The seventh aspect of her new understanding related to the nature of death and how this understanding transformed medical care in terminal situations. Elena came to see death not as medical failure, but as natural transition that could be facilitated with love and dignity. Jesus demonstrated that consciousness transcends physical death. Elena understood, when I cannot heal the physical body, I can still offer healing for deeper aspects of the person that will continue beyond current life. This perspective allowed her to offer unique types of comfort and assistance to patients and families facing death, frequently facilitating transition experiences that were deeply peaceful and transformative. The eighth aspect of her new understanding involved understanding of how the revelations she had received related to larger changes occurring in global human consciousness. Elena perceived that she was not alone in developing expanded capacities, but was part of a global network of individuals who were rediscovering spiritual technologies. We are living during an era of spiritual rediscovery, Elena understood. Throughout the planet, people are developing capacities similar to those that Jesus demonstrated. It's as if the spiritual network he established is finally being activated on a massive scale. The ninth aspect of her new understanding related to the specific role she would play in continuing Jesus's mission and how to prepare others to develop similar capacities. Elena understood that her function was not to keep knowledge secret, but to demonstrate through example how spiritual technologies could be integrated with conventional medical. My responsibility is to live these principles so consistent that others naturally feel inspired to similar possibility. Real change happens through practical demonstration, not through theoretical. The 10th and deepest aspect of her new understanding related to the fundamental nature of love as universal healing force, and how this understanding was destined to transform all human medicine in the following decades. Love is not just emotion or spiritual concept, Elena understood with crystal clarity. It is the most advanced medical technology that exists, an energetic force that can reorganize physical matter, accelerate healing, and elevate consciousness simultaneously. Jesus came to teach humanity how to use this technology. With all these aspects integrated, Elena Rossi had developed a philosophy of life and medical practice that honored both scientific competence and spiritual wisdom, demonstrating that it was possible to operate as a highly effective medical professional while channeling healing principles that directly echoed the methods Jesus had used to transform lives and elevate human consciousness 2,000 years before. In the months that followed Elara's departure, who had fully recovered and returned to the stars in a new ship sent by her civilization, Elena Rossi discovered that her life had been transformed in ways that continued to unfold daily. The revelations about Jesus and the spiritual technologies she had learned did not remain theoretical knowledge, but became practical tools that revolutionized her effectiveness as a paramedic and her ability to facilitate profound healing in everyone she encountered. The most notable change was in the results Elena could achieve in medical emergencies. Her colleagues began to notice that patients treated by her demonstrated extraordinarily rapid recoveries, fewer complications, and frequently reported experiences of deep peace even during traumatic situations. Dr. Caldwell, medical director of the regional hospital, eventually called her for a private conversation. "Elena, I need to ask about your methods," he said with genuine curiosity. "Your success rates are consistently above anything we have on record. Patients you treat arrive here in better conditions than should be possible given the severity of their initial injuries. What are you doing differently?" Elena had prepared for this moment. "Dr. Caldwell, I've discovered that when I treat patients with genuine love and focused healing intention, in addition to standard medical protocols, this seems to activate natural healing processes that accelerate recovery. It's as if the very act of caring with profound compassion creates an environment that facilitates healing." "Interesting," Dr. Caldwell responded, clearly intrigued. "Is there a scientific basis for this?" Emerging research in psychoneuroimmunology suggests that positive emotional states can significantly influence healing processes. Elena explained carefully, "I'm simply applying these principles more consciously and consistently." This conversation led to Elena being invited to conduct workshops on compassionate medicine for other healthcare professionals in the region. Without ever mentioning her experiences with Elara or specific revelations about Jesus, Elena began teaching colleagues about techniques they could apply to improve outcomes through integrating healing intention with technical competence. "The secret," she explained during these workshops, "is understanding that true healing always involves more than just physical interventions. When we treat patients as complete beings, body, mind, and spirit. We activate healing capacities they naturally possess. The results were extraordinary. Medical professionals who implemented Elena's techniques reported not only better patient outcomes, but also greater personal satisfaction and sense of purpose in their work. Many began questioning limitations of purely mechanical approaches to medicine and exploring deeper dimensions of healing. Elena Rossi is initiating a silent revolution in how we think about medicine, commented Dr. Helen Foster after observing changes in her own practice. She's reminding us that we are healers, not just technicians, and that distinction makes all the difference in the world. But perhaps the most significant impact of Elena's work was on ordinary people who began understanding that healing capacities were not reserved only for medical professionals. Through her examples and subtle teachings, many people discovered they could facilitate healing in their own families and communities through conscious application of love and compassionate intention. "I learned from Elena that we all have the capacity to help others heal," wrote Lucia Gomez, one of Elena's neighbors, in a letter that went viral on local social media. "Not through complex medical procedures, but through the quality of love and attention we offer. It's as if the very act of genuinely caring for someone activates healing forces that are always present, waiting to be awakened." During the 2 years following her experience with Elara, Elena continued receiving guidance through occasional telepathic communication, not just from Elara, but also from other evolved consciousnesses, including the one who had incarnated as Jesus. These communications always emphasized that she was participating in a global awakening where spiritual technologies were being reintroduced into human society through practical applications. Elena came a communication she recognized as being from the consciousness of Jesus. "You are demonstrating exactly what I intended when I showed humanity that healing capacities are birthright gifts of every conscious soul. Continue showing through example that love is the most powerful medicine that exists." Now, more than 3 years after her transformative encounter with Elara, Elena Rossi has established herself as one of the most respected voices in integrative medicine in the Southwest region. Her characteristically humble yet effective approach has inspired hundreds of healthcare professionals to expand their own practices beyond purely technical limitations. But perhaps her most important legacy is demonstrating that ordinary people can develop and apply extraordinary healing capacities when they understand that love is not just a feeling but a real energetic force capable of facilitating profound transformations. You who are hearing this story live in an era when the discoveries of Elena Rossi and others like her are rapidly transforming our understanding of human potential and the nature of healing. If you have ever felt that there is more to healing traditions than conventional medicine recognizes, if you have experienced moments where your loving presence seemed to help someone feel better in inexplicable ways, Elena's experiences offer confirmation that your intuitions are correct. The central message emerging from Elena's extraordinary journey is simultaneously simple and revolutionary. The healing capacities that Jesus demonstrated were not unique to him, but examples of the potential that exists within every human consciousness when operating from the frequency of unconditional love. If you work in healing professions, medicine, nursing, therapy, or any field focused on alleviating human suffering, Elena's story suggests you may be being called to rediscover deeper dimensions of your work that transcend conventional technical protocols. The spiritual technologies that Jesus introduced are not abstract religious concepts, but practical principles that can be applied by anyone willing to approach healing from genuine love and compassionate intention. Your preparation for understanding and applying these principles can begin simply through developing greater awareness about the energetic quality you bring to your interactions with others. Remember that Jesus chose to demonstrate his most important teachings through acts of healing, because he knew that love applied practically to alleviate suffering is the purest expression of advanced spirituality. When you care for someone with genuine love, you are literally channeling the same force that Jesus used to perform his miracles. The transformation that Elena Rossi experienced from competent paramedic to healing facilitator who integrates modern medicine with ancient spiritual technologies demonstrates that it is possible to honor both science and spirituality in service to alleviating human suffering. The evolved beings who communicated with Elena through Elara continue observing and assisting Earth, identifying individuals who demonstrate potential to serve as modern channels of the same healing principles that Jesus introduced. If you feel drawn to healing work in any form, This may be a sign that you too are being gently called to explore capacities that transcend conventional limitations. Jesus did not come to be worshipped as a distant and inaccessible figure, but to demonstrate possibilities that exist within every human soul. When he said, "These things that I do, you shall do also, and greater still," he was offering a literal promise about potential that each person possesses to facilitate healing and transformation. You are living during an era of rediscovery where Jesus' teachings about love as healing force are being validated through practical applications that integrate ancient wisdom with modern scientific knowledge. The only question that remains is, are you ready to explore your own capacity to serve as a channel for the kind of love that Jesus demonstrated to be the most powerful medicine in the universe? And you, who have just heard this extraordinary story about the true capacities that Jesus came to teach, have you had experiences where your loving presence seemed to facilitate healing in others? Have you felt that you possess potential to help people in ways that transcend conventional explanations? Leave in the comments your own experiences with moments of inexplicable healing. You may discover that you carry more capacities than you imagine. If this story about the cosmic revelations of Jesus resonated deeply with something within you, subscribe to Stories from Beyond and activate the bell to not miss other narratives that explore spiritual truths being rediscovered in our time. And share this video with people who work in healing or who you feel are ready to understand that Jesus' capacities are natural human potentials waiting to be developed. Remember, in a universe where love is literally the most advanced medical technology that exists, the only limits to what you can facilitate in terms of healing are those you choose to accept about your own potential as a channel for universal healing forces.